near you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, Rosemary, Rebecca, Leona King. We got Brown Barber coming around the corner with Crystal. Gary Spikes is coming in. Hello there, everybody. Oh, Gene Hudson, Denise, everybody, welcome. Rebecca's got the tow truck on standby. And Brown Barber, nice to see you, Brown. I was just talking about you today. So, Justin Decker, how are you doing today, sir?
I am alive and kicking, and that is always a good thing.
Right. So, nice to have everybody. I'm still trying to learn where my camera is at on the system. So, round of applause, everybody. So, welcome to another edition. So, what's very interesting, right, is that mermaids, a very fascinating subject, and a lot of people don't know the backstory about mermaids. And if you look into the phenomena around this subject, if I told you that we have evidence that this goes back on caves that has been painted 30,000 years, it's been documented 30,000 years. Now, when I say that to people, are like, "Oh, come on, there's no way." Yes, we were told that people that used to sail the oceans and the seven seas, they would hear things and see things, and they would be called out. And we were told that the sailors were drunk, and it was the liquor they had, and they were seeing manatees and sea creatures, and they would blame it on the alcohol. Yes. And I'm like, well, what about these macrakens and octopuses and things on the maps that would take down ships? Now, ladies and gentlemen, you trying to tell me everybody that's been in history that has seen Bigfoot or these monsters in the woods, they're all drinking? I'm just saying. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I was really kind of surprised at what I found when I went through it, because I was expecting a lot of folklore.
Right.
And, some beginning points and just kind of, this folklore started with the mariners and just kind of built up from there. But when I started digging into the history, it made me change the whole way I did my presentation. We'll put it that way.
Interesting.
It completely changed my approach to this topic, which surprised me, really surprised me.
Interesting. So yeah. I wonder what people out here in the audience thinks about mermaids. And now, I don't know if people realize there's actually a video that surfaced not too long ago about people somewhere fishing, and the guy was recording his fisherman trip with his fellow sailors, and something was calling out to them, and he actually recorded it. So anyways, I just want to throw it out there.
Yeah. Do you have that pulled up at all? Can we play that? I don't have that pulled up.
I need to find some other things I'm working on, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I got a whole new system. I've been working on it all day. Yeah. And but it's fascinating. So I think who did a show on that like 7 or 8 years ago, Mermaids?
Discovery Channel did a documentary on mermaids, and it was actually really fascinating. And they did such a good job that people thought it was real.
Yes, they did.
They thought it was real. There was legit people freaking out about it, You got time, Grizz, because I kind of did this in a chronological order, starting with ancient history and kind of working my way up to modern day stuff. So you can have time to take a look at that and pull up any of the videos and pictures and stuff. That's cool. So we're going to do this a little bit different tonight, guys, a little bit different format. Grizzly's been challenging me to up my game a little bit. And so I did. I put together a slide presentation kind of a thing. And the way I decided to approach this was not from, here's a bunch of information about mermaids. I decided to run them through what I've now started calling my believability matrix, right? And we've talked about this before. What kind of check boxes do I have when I'm studying something to see if I think this is a real viable thing, or if it's just folklore and myth and legend, right? And I've done it through Bigfoot, and I've done it for Dogman and chupacabras and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, with all the information I'm finding out, why don't I run mermaids through this believability matrix that I've put together? And so that's what I did. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. And we're going to find hopefully a lot of information that you guys haven't heard before. I know there was a lot that I hadn't come across before. You know, we all know about the Little Mermaid from Disney, and we all know Peter Pan, and some of us bibliophiles might know Hans Christian Andersen actually wrote the original Little Mermaid story, and it was really dark and sadistic and actually quite terrifying. But, you know, that was about the extent of the mermaid knowledge, right? And so we're going to run this through this and see what comes up. So you guys have questions, let's bring them up as we're going through this. I don't care if we get interrupted. Brian is already starting us off here. Brian's asking, are mermaids and sirens the same thing? And the answer to that is yes and no. So we'll kind of touch on that a little bit, and I can bring up that point. Just remind me. So basically what we're starting with is do you believe mermaids as a real entity? Is it
yes, I do.
Like Dogman? Is there a real phenomenon? And when we say real, we don't necessarily mean, you know, Disney's Little Mermaid like Ariel, but is there an entity, a creature, a phenomenon that is behind this? All right. So we're going to run it through the believability matrix. And this is kind of what I've come through that I look for when I'm studying a topic. I look to see if there's any ancient historical context. I look to see if it's multicultural or if is it just localized. I look for a line of historical sightings. I look for any modern day sightings, physical evidence, and then personal experiences. So we're going to go through each one of these and kind of analyze where mermaids fit into this and how many of those check boxes can we actually check off. And as you guys know, I look at things from a very logical perspective, and if I can check off those boxes, then I have to logically say that this thing might be real, right? Bigfoot for me checks off all those boxes. Dogman checks off all those boxes for me. So even though I've never seen or experienced, if I can check off those boxes, I have to at least honestly say there's something to this phenomenon, even though if I don't know what it is. So that's the believability matrix. All right, so first we're going to start with ancient historical context. Now, I found not just cave drawings, but actual context from 1000 BC. This is the first kind of actual culture that has mermaids, and it's the Syrian culture. They had a goddess, Atargatis. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but that's what we're going to use. And her legend is actually kind of similar to a lot of legends we hear from indigenous folklore when it comes to some of their mythology and how some of these beings come to be. She was a goddess that accidentally killed the man that she loved. He was a shepherd, and she was so powerful. He was a mortal man that she ended up killing him. So in her grief, she decided that she would no longer live. So she threw herself into a lake, but the lake was not deep enough, powerful enough, strong enough to kill her and contain her beauty. And so her lower half turned into a fish and her upper half stayed as a beautiful woman. And this is the first cultural documentation of a mermaid. And this is actually an old Syrian coin that was dug up that shows her figure. Okay, now we're talking 1000 BC in Syria. Okay. Also, we have Dagon or Dagon, depending on where you're reading it from. He was a god of the Philistines. The god Dagon first appears in archaeological references about 2500 BC. There's many biblical references to Dagon, so I found that really interesting. As we go through the Bible, we have all these different stories and biblical texts. It even talks about the story of Samson. If you know the story of Samson, when he, at the very end of his story, when he pulled down the temple on himself and killed everybody, where he was actually at was a temple to Dagon. So Dagon was a merman, and he was a god of the Philistines. Japanese culture. They speak of a hybrid, half human, half fish called the Ningyo. And this goes way back in time. This isn't just a newer thing. In Indian culture, we have the Matsya, which is the fish avatar of Vishnu in the Hindu mythology. So we're talking major world cultures and ancient history separated. And according to current thoughts, they mingled. And so we still have these same types of creatures coming out in their ancient history and mythology. Some Chinese works refers to mermaids from the 4th century BC. Ancient German and Scandinavian poems have examples of mermaids. Okay, so we can find instances of mermaids going all the way back to the furthest histories that we're discovering in major cultures. And that surprised me. And the next box we're looking at is, are they multicultural? Well, here's a list that I put together, and I kind of stopped because it was getting pretty long, of different cultures around the world that have mermaid legends and lores and story. West, South, and Central Africa. I wanted to make sure we separate those up because Africa is a really big continent with lots of different cultures in there. So even within their separate cultures, they have mermaid stories. Greece, Rome, Eastern Europe bloc, Ireland, Asia, Japan, China, Thailand, Scotland, Western Europe, Denmark, Native America, Canada, as well as here in the U.S., Australia, the Solomon Islands. I mean, we're talking globally, guys. We have reports of mermaid-like creatures. That surprised me. I really thought it was going to be more, the Dutch cultures, Sweden, all that kind of stuff, kind of Greece and Rome, because they're into the fantasy animals. I kind of thought that would be it. But we're talking Australia, the Aborigines have the stories and all this kind of stuff. Totally blew my mind. Got a couple of questions I'm seeing. Sam Quentin, do you believe in selkies? Selkies are a completely different thing. They're a more Irish fairy tale, the fae folk. They tend to be seen more as otter-like creatures, otter-like fairy folk that live in the freshwater streams and stuff. So totally different thing. Do I believe in them? I don't know. I believe there's something to the idea of the fairy world as far as all the individual entities. That'd be a whole different topic to look at. All right, so moving on. Historical sightings. So we talked about there are a bunch of different historical sightings. Now let's look at a list. I pulled these from a website, and I have it listed here. I can't read it because it's so small on here, but I'm going to give credit to them. Most of this list came from their website. And we're going to go all the way back to the 1st century AD by Pliny the Elder. I'm sure most of us have heard of who Pliny the Elder is. He was a famous scientist around the time of the 1st century AC. He wrote multiple accounts for natural history, considered one of the first scientists out there. He wrote a lot of accounts about what they called nereids. It was a type of mermaid. It looked like a woman with rough, scaly bodies like fish, and they would see them sitting upon dolphins or other ocean creatures. As we go through these, I want you guys to pay attention to some of the common threads. When I read reports of like Bigfoot and Dogman, I look for common threads, commonalities between different reports from different cultures and different times. Okay. And let's see what you guys can come up with at the end of the show to see if you're paying attention. He writes different accounts of them being found dead upon the shore, or villagers hearing Titan playing his conch close by the seashore. Titan, the sea god. Pliny also mentions mermen being spotted in the Gulf of Cadiz who would climb upon decks of ships in the night. Between 1040 and 1105 by Rabbi Shlomo Yishaki. He was a rabbi. He describes mermaids in the Talmud which is an ancient Jewish book of law and legend. He writes, there are fish in the sea, which half is the form of a man and half in the form of a fish, called sirene in Old French. That's where siren comes from. And then there's a later rabbi comments on this phrase and kind of expounds on it and says, this refers to a creature in the sea that is similar to a person from the navel upwards and is similar to a woman in all aspects, in that it has breast and long hair like that of a woman. And from the navel downwards, it is a fish. It also mentions that these mermaids sing beautifully and have a pleasant voice. So even back here, it's not just the same type of creature. They're literally describing them exactly the same way. It's not just they look kind of like a human, but they're a fish. It's not just their head is human. It's literally with their midsection. It comes through all the way. And that kind of surprised me that the description stayed pretty much the same all the way through. Not a lot of evolution in there. You know how when we're telling stories and describing monsters, even in movies, you know, every time you have a new telling, it gets bigger and creepier and scarier. But that just kind of doesn't do it with the mermaids.
I have the video.
You have the video? You want to put it up?
I have the video. All right, ladies. I'm figuring out my system. So yeah, I've got it. All right, here we go. Present, share screen. I want to make sure I share that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am not responsible for the audio content because the guy freaks out. So this has been debunked. So tell me if you hear the audio. I think I hit the audio button. In action.
Noise, bro.
Yep.
What is that noise? Where are you? This is crazy. I heard it. I heard it. I hear it. Oh my God. That's crazy. That's nuts. What the?
So
that's wild.
So there has been people that actually has been walking upon beaches and found carcasses. And this one guy was like, honey, come over here and look at this. And the guy was like, I'm taking this back to the hotel. And then the wife's like, no, the hell you ain't. What the hell is that? It stinks. The guy's like, I don't know, but it's real. And the wife's like, leave it alone. She's like, no, look at it. It's real. It's like 4.5 foot long. I don't know where to look. It's like 4.5 foot long. And he's poking it. And it's like, what is that? It's like, it's half human and half fish. I mean, your mind goes to mermaid anyways. It is creepy. And the guy that was on that fishing boat, I can't play the whole video. It's a shortened down version. He loses his mind. And the guy's out there on the deck. He's like, dude, you got a phone? MF and F you, record this. Because nobody's going to believe it. He's like, what? Record what? He's like, what we're listening to. And that's when he got his phone out in that short little burst that's kind of clean. He starts video and audio recording. He's in disbelief because it's singing. And it's like almost communicating to what, anyways, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And you know what's wild? It sounds a lot like cetaceans, right? Like whales.
Yes.
It has a very similar sound, but if you ever heard whale song, for one, it's unusual to hear it above the water. You can do it, but it doesn't sound that clear and that intense, right?
No.
And very high pitch where most, and so now you're talking more into the dolphin range, but again, that's not exactly what they sound like. That it's reminiscent of that.
So the captain that was selling that ship, that's the first thing that they thought it was. And the captain was like, dude, where we're at, there are no wells in this vicinity by hundreds and hundreds of the temperature, the wells don't. And the guys are like,
Yeah.
"Oh, come on, Captain." And he's like, And
Yeah.
they just everybody started losing their cool. It's not funny.
And you don't hear them singing above the water. If you're going to hear
like
them,
Gene
they're
Hudson
going to
said.
be by the surface, and they're still going to have that muffled underwater sound. So it won't be that loud, that intense, that clear. You know,
Right.
as far as I know, I'm not a whale expert. You know, I don't, but I'm just saying, as far from my understanding.
So
So that is
here's the
definitely
deal.
fascinating.
Down at the lake, when we used to swim across Rough River, right? My buddies and I used to go down, I used to go underneath the water, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I want to know if a boat's coming." They're like, "Why do you go underneath the water?" Because even though you can't see a boat, you can hear the boat coming before you can see it come around that long bend down there, and you can hear it just like whales and other stuff. And there have been, and I think it's right after the Discovery Channel. I think a lot of these, we call these people that oceanographers, whatever, they are amateurs.
Oceanographers, marine biologists, ichthyologists,
right. They're amateurs came forward and they're like, we are recording sounds in the ocean that are not coming back, animals. And they're like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, we thought at first we discovered new whales or new types of different species of dolphins, but we don't know what they are." And they played some of them, and all of a sudden they just disappeared off the internet, the recordings, and now the scientists are like gone. And it's like, where do they go?
Don't know what you're talking about,
right? You know, and it's just interesting. So I'm just saying, I just throw it out there, but yes,
yeah. Lady Wolf, you make a good point. It says no mermaids will have long, luxurious hair due to the salt water. We'll hear some of the other descriptions coming up about their hair and what they look like. So keep that in mind.
Well, they say that they try to lure men, right?
Yep.
And they also try to lure females. And, you know, you don't hear much of the females. It's more the men. So interesting.
Yep, and that's an interesting part. We'll get into that a little bit because that's not just mer people. That's part of that has that particular habit. But we can get into that one. Mid 13th century, there's a book called the Speculum Regale. Essentially, what it was a text designed to help teach and educate the next king. All right, so it's an Old Norse text. Used for the education and law and legend and proper etiquette and all this kind of stuff for the next king. And it describes a mermaid that washed ashore on the coast of Greenland. Okay. Now, some of these descriptions get really specific. It was like a woman as far down as her waist, long hands and soft hair, the neck and head in all respects like those of a human being. The hands seemed to be long and the fingers not to be pointed, but united into a web like that on the feet of water birds. So what they're saying is long webbed hands. From the waist down, this monster resembles a fish with scales, tail, fins. Shows especially before heavy storms. The habit of this creature is to dive frequently and rise again to the surface with fish in his hands. And while the sailors see it playing with the fish or throwing them towards the ship, they go down and grab fish and start chucking them at the ships. Is what they're saying. They fear that they are doomed to lose several of their crew when they see this. But when it casts the fish from the vessel, the sailors take it as a good omen that they will not suffer. The monster has a very horrible face with a broad brow and piercing eyes, a wide mouth, and a double chin. So that one's a little bit different. We're not talking about, beauty and all that kind of stuff with these guys.
I wonder if Krista would offer a salad.
Maybe they're vegetarian.
I'm sorry, Crystal. She's like, "What the hell, Grizzly?" You know, on one of her shows, she said that the black-eyed children, she'd offer a salad to them.
She'd offer them a salad. I remember.
Yeah, I was like, anyways, I was brain dead for like 12 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. In 1430 in the Netherlands, the Dutch mermaid. This is a famous story. 1403, it recorded that a dike had a crack which opened to the sea. Water started flooding the river in massive amounts. After they repaired it, they saw a mermaid swimming in the river near the town. It had come through the crack in the dike. At first, people were scared, but the mermaid didn't bother anyone. It just kept swimming. Later, the villagers captured the mermaid. She transformed into a human with 2 legs. She couldn't speak, but they forced her to join the society, just like us people would do. The mermaid tried to escape and jump back into the water multiple times, but someone always stopped her. So that one has a little more of a fantastical folklore to it. They caught her, they got her on land, and she transformed into a human, or at least she got human legs.
Just like the movie Splash, everybody's referring to.
Yeah. Christopher Columbus. On January 9th, 1493, Columbus was sailing near the Dominican Republic and wrote in his journal about 3 mermaids he saw. They were not as beautiful as they are painted, although to some extent they have a human appearance in the face. And I had to note, it is believed that Columbus actually had encountered manatees. So while this isn't something that I would classify in the mermaid lore, I wanted to point it out because it is a kind of a famous mention of mermaids, and he qualified them as mermaids just kind of based on the fact that he was not familiar with them.
Does everybody know what a manatee looks like? Let's show them one real quick. And I always said, when they taught us this, I said there was no way that a drunken sailor would say this is a mermaid.
And here's the thing that the pictures don't do justice of. These things are freaking huge. They're huge, guys. But if you see a full-grown manatee, they are massive. We're talking rhinoceros, hippo. We're talking ginormous. These things are not tiny. They're not people size. Babies are people size. Right. But they are massive. That's the thing people don't appreciate.
Like hippo, right.
Yeah. People don't appreciate that unless they've seen them. 1603, a mermaid was spotted off the coast of Wales near a village called Pendine. A farmer named Thomas Reynolds first spotted the creature, then called others over to watch it for 3 hours. They watched this creature for 3 hours. William Saunders from the same village of Pendine examined Reynolds and the other witness accounts. The story was credible enough that in 1604, an image was created to depict the mermaid. It described her as a monstrous fish that appeared in the form of a woman from her waist upwards. I could not find the picture. I looked, but it was not there. Henry Hudson, guys, the explorer that discovered a lot of northern the U.S. and Canada, he writes in his journal, this morning, one of our company looking overboard saw a mermaid, and calling up some of the company to see her, one more came up, and by that tune, she was come close to the ship's side, looking earnestly on the men. A little after, a sea came and overturned her. From the navel, their spelling is really weird because it's Old English kind of translation.
Right.
From the navel upward, her backs and breasts were like a woman's, as they say that they that saw her. Her body as big as one of us. Her skin was very white. Her long hair hanging down behind of color black. And her going down, they saw her tail, which was like that of a porpoise and speckled like a mackerel. Okay, so we keep getting this description over time. Long hair and a very fish-like tail, kind of like a porpoise, but it's scaled. They keep mentioning scaled. And again, this is Henry Hudson, who's an explorer, a naturalist. We have 1670 by Reverend Lucas Deebs. He was a reverend for the Lutheran Church off the islands of Denmark. There was seen by many of the inhabitants a mermaid close to the shore. She had long hair on her head, which hung down to the surface of the water all about her. She held a fish in her right hand. So again, same descriptions. This one I thought was interesting. Samuel Fallours. I did some extra research on this one because the website only had a little snippet about this one. But this one actually fascinated me because of who Samuel Fallours was. He was a British-born, but served as a soldier and the official painter for the Dutch East India Company. Whoever has been watching Pirates of the Caribbean is familiar with the East India Company. He was stationed at the island of Ambon, where he made watercolors of the local wildlife, including tropical fish. As few Europeans had ever seen the incredible creatures he depicted, his sketches were popular among Holland's wealthy patrons. This guy is known for his scientific, accurate, colorful, bright, realistic images. Okay. The image of the mermaid, first published in 1719 edition of, I'm not going to say all the French words, but it's fish, crayfishes, and crabs of diverse coloration and extraordinary form. So basically, he would go off this island and get all the fish and make paintings of them and send them back to the wealthy people and to the scientists and all this kind of stuff so they could study them. He was claimed to have been taken from life. He mentioned that he had observed a siren, is what he called it, in a tub of water for 4 days until it died. Fleurs, along with a number of his colleagues, documented this encounter in detail. A monster resembling a siren caught on the coast of the island of Borne in the province of Ambon. It was 59 inches long and of an eel-like proportion. It lived on shore in a tank of water for 4 days and 7 hours. It uttered occasional cries similar to that of a mouse. It would not eat, although it was offered small fishes, mollusks, crabs, crayfishes, etc. After its death, a few feces similar to those of a cat. Brian Barber, did you hear that? Feces similar to those of a cat were found in its tank. Renard's book contained 460 brilliantly colored engravings of sea life of the Moluccas as drawn by Flores, first published in 1719 and then reissued in 1754 after his death. This is a hand-colored engraving of the mermaid after the sketch that he did. It was published in Amsterdam 1754 as part of the book. In the book, the mermaid is described as 59 inches long with eel-like proportions. So that is a drawing, a rendering of what they had captured, kept alive for 4.5 days, tried to feed, and actually, they said, left scat behind. That's probably the most scientifically kind of observation that we have, that I've come across. And I thought that was really surprising.
And this is not an artist rendition. This is just an everyday person.
We got Exeter, 1739. It's an article that describes the account of fishermen seeing a creature leap out and run away from them. This was interesting because of the description, and I don't understand how it did this, but we'll read the description. At their coming up to it, it was dying, having grown like a human creature. Its feet were webbed like a duck's. It had eyes, nose, and mouth resembling those of a man, only the nose was somewhat depressed. A tail not unlike a salmon's turning up towards its back and is 4 feet high. And it was publicly shown in the city. This one has a little bit of a description because if you read it, it sounds like it's describing feet and a tail, like a salmon. Some people say this potentially could have been a seal or another kind of pinniped. The problem is they don't have feet and a tail, but some people are thinking, maybe there was a combination of stories. One guy called them feet, one guy called them tail. And so, the person designed the whole thing and put it together that way. But it says it got up and ran away. So this was an interesting one. Denise, yeah, it's interesting because a lot of times you'll see the mermaid's description is very short, 3, 4, 5 inches tall, and some of them are the size of humans. So I guess, you're just a short human and mermaids are the same size.
She did say she'd share her shrimp cocktail.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. Great shout out to Scott's Life. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate that. 1797 by William Monroe. This is a school teacher. And what he was doing, he was writing to a newspaper in England saying, hey, this is my experience. This was my encounter. For people that don't believe, I'm going on record saying, hey, this is what happened to me. He said about 12 years ago when he was a parochial schoolmaster, in the course of walking, I'm going to kind of shortcut this because it's a long story. Walking along the shore, being a fine day in the summer, He was inclined to walk farther than he normally does. His attention was caught by a figure resembling an unclothed human female, which, you know, most people walking along the beach back then is going to see a unclothed woman. They're going to catch their attention. It was sitting upon a rock extending into the sea. Picture a little mermaid. Apparently in the action of combing its hair, which flowed around its shoulders and of a light brown color. The resemblance of the figure bared to a prototype, and the visible parts were so striking, basically saying that she was pretty. That had not the rock on which it was sitting been dangerous for bathing, I would have basically saying this was a really pretty girl, and if it hadn't been too dangerous for me, I probably would have jumped out there to go meet her. The head was covered with hair. I know, right? The head was covered with hair of the color above mentioned and shaded on the crown. The forehead round, the face plump, the cheeks ruddy, the eyes blue, mouth and lips of a natural form resembling those of a man. The teeth I could not discover as the mouth was shut. Breast and abdomen, arms and fingers, the size in which hands were employed, did not appear to be webbed. But this, I am not positive. So he's basically just recounting this really good description that he saw of this thing. I remained on the rock for 3 or 4 minutes after I saw it, and was exercising the period. It basically was combing its hair the whole time. Didn't notice he was there. Appeared to be proud of its long, thick hair. Then it dropped into the sea, which was level with the abdomen, from whence it did not reappear to me. So, chest high water basically, and then it dropped in and disappeared. He said he had a distinct view of the features being at no great distance. The sun was brightly shining, so now he's giving the conditions. He was close to it. It wasn't a dark, cloudy day. He saw it. Immediately before getting into the water, it seemed to have observed me. The eyes went directly towards me where I stood. Maybe necessary to remark that previous to the period I beheld the object, I had heard it frequently reported by several persons, and some of them persons whose veracity I would never have disputed. So he had heard sightings of this mermaid from trustworthy people before he saw his. I was not disposed to credit their testimony on the subject, saying he didn't believe him. But now I can say of truth, it was only by seeing it that I believe. And then he goes into his clarification. If the above narrative can in any degree be subservient towards establishing the existence of a phenomenon hitherto almost incredible to naturalists, or to remove the skepticism from others who are ready to dispute everything which they cannot fully comprehend, you are welcome to it from, dear sir, you're most obliged. So basically saying, I hope this story will help you guys, for anybody that doesn't believe it, the scientists that don't believe it, or anybody else that won't believe what they don't see for themselves. This is basically my sworn testimony. So that was a really cool sighting that I came across. And there was so many more, guys. I stopped. I just couldn't keep going. So here's a list from 1801 to 1913. When I talk about a line of historical sightings, this is the best example I have ever seen outside of Bigfoot. 1801 by the governor of the island in the Caribbean. 1809 by Miss Mackey, the daughter of Reverend Mackey. Merchild sightings in Britain in 1810. 1811, 2 people saw one. 1814, a group sighting in Scotland. In 1830, by villagers on an island on the west coast of Scotland. 1857, another story of Scotland from the same area. 1886, a fisherman of Gabarus. I don't know where that is. And I have a note here. This is the first real mermaid sighting in Canada. There we go. This is the first mermaid sighting in Canada off Cape Breton, an island off the coast of Nova Scotia. 1890, the Deerness mermaid. 1913, the Hoy sighting, which is also by Deerness. So I could have kept going for, another 45 minutes just on historical sightings. So I jumped into modern day sightings. So we're going to start 1943.
But you notice the difference, go ahead, between the years. What changed? Yep. Anybody in the audience knows why the significant difference in sightings change? The modernizations of ships.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. And we can talk about that. One of the reasons I believe that we don't see sea monsters anymore is exactly that reason right there, right? So previous to the Industrial Revolution and the modernization of ships, ships were by wind and by oar, and they didn't have necessarily shipping lanes. They just traveled where the wind took them and the currents took them. And so without the extra noise of motors and all this kind of stuff, you would see more of the sea monsters. You weren't chasing them away. Big difference, big difference. And I think the same thing of why Bigfoot and all this kind of stuff, same thing. We have more cars, more noise, more stuff, so they hide deeper in the woods. I really think that's kind of how that works. We scare a lot of stuff away. Same thing for the Kraken, same thing for giant octopus, same thing for a lot of megalodon sightings, sea serpents, sea dinosaurs, all these things that the sailors used to see, and people go, how come they don't see them anymore? That's why. Because they can hear the boats coming from 100 miles away, and they make sure that they're not seen. All right, modern day sightings. 1943 by Japanese soldiers. This is probably the most prominent mermaid sighting in the 19th century. On the shores in Indonesia, several mermaids were spotted by Japanese soldiers. One of these mermaids was spotted on the beach, giving the soldiers plenty of time to get detailed descriptions. Roughly 4 foot 9 inches tall, pinkish skin, human-looking face and limbs, spikes along its head and mouth like a carp. Later, a sergeant named Hariba heard the news of a dead mermaid on shore and tried to investigate. He urged scientists to study the mermaids, but failed to convince the scientific community that these sightings were valid. Basically, it was said that a fisherman had captured one of these and brought it into his hut. And that's what he's talking about. He said, we have a live one. The scientists need to come study this. We're talking 1943, guys, not that long ago. And they're going, you know, this guy's a sergeant in the Japanese military going, we caught one. You guys need to come check it out. And they wouldn't do it. A couple years later, there's a Scottish fisherman who reported that he had seen a mermaid in the water about 20 yards from the shore, combing her hair on a floating herring box used to preserve live lobster. So I'm assuming that's like a water cooler that floats so they can keep the critters live until they bring them in. He says, unfortunately, as soon as she looked around, she realized she had been seen and plunged into the sea. We've heard that before. A reporter named McLean says, but no questioning could shake the old fisherman's conviction. He was adamant that he had seen a mermaid. A guy that has lived his whole life by the sea, probably made his living by the sea, knows those waters intimately like the back of his hand, could not be convinced that he had seen anything other than a mermaid. 1967, multiple tourists in British Columbia, Canada, guys. This sighting is interesting because it happened from a ferry boat. Tourists saw, this is kind of like Splash. I wonder if this is where they got the movie from. Tourists saw a woman with the tail of a dolphin and were described as having long, blonde, beautiful hair. It was eating a salmon. It was even reported to the newspaper. However, no one has seen the mermaid since. Jeff, am I boring you there, buddy? You're sleeping, man. Come on. This one is one you guys may have heard of. It was a pretty popular thing. I only mention it because it's modern and some people say it's legit. And I don't, but I'll tell you why afterwards. We're going to mention it anyway because I don't want anybody saying, you know, I'm picking and choosing what I want to. This is a very popular sighting. A diver in Hawaii who operates Jack's Diving Locker off of Kauai said he'd heard about the mermaid before. Most of us who are out in these waters regularly have heard the stories, but I'd never seen her until that morning. We were on our way out to the point when a schooner of dolphins started following the boat, very common thing, playing in our wake, and suddenly one of the men on the port side starts yelling and pointing. I couldn't believe what I saw. There, not 10 feet from the bow, was what looked like a nude woman. She leapt into the air, and my heart almost gave out on me. The entire lower half of her was covered with scales and tapered back into a huge fishtail. She jumped once more, then disappeared below the surface. Jack supposedly has video and pictures and you can see them. I think it's suspect. I think it's a hoax to drum up business for his diving company. My personal opinion. There is no proof of it being a hoax, so I can't say it is. I'm not going to come on record saying it's a hoax. I don't know, but I think it's a suspect account.
But here's the problem, right? So,
Yep, go ahead.
however it may be, and this is where I try to tell people in law enforcement, you cry wolf over and over, and one day you are going to be in the right, and something's going to happen, and I'll be damned if we show up, we're not going to believe you. And you're going to swear up and down it's going to happen. And I've seen this before in life, ladies and gentlemen, to where
and that's why I'm not swearing to it.
Is, has not told the truth and something bad. And I'm not going to say what, I'm just going to say something bad has happened. And they are telling the truth. And it's just like your credibility is shot.
Yep.
And you may have that golden shot or that piece of credible evidence, but regardless, it's you and it's worthless.
That's true. I didn't put the pictures up. If you can Google this very easily and see the pictures, Grizzly, if you want to, we can pull them up. To me, they just really, 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 really look like those actors that dress like mermaids and swim around. They're all over the place now, especially in 98. As good as the pictures were, and I hate to say this, right, because we say this all the time as Bigfoot, as good as the photographs were, to me, they looked like they were staged not to show detail. As close as it was, as great of the silhouette that you can see of the pictures, to me, it looks like they were intentionally set up to not be able to see the details. Could it be true? Yes, it could. This could be 100% legit sighting. Maybe the photos were designed to accentuate the sighting. I don't know. The whole thing to me reeks of a business ploy. But again, there's no proof of a hoax. No proof has been brought forth. So we can't say that.
Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have people running around in ape costumes, Bigfoot costumes.
It happens.
For beef sticks and other commercials to drum up business, right? We have a location in southern Indiana that had Bigfoot sightings 15 years ago. And what did the guy do? Put a Bigfoot above his local country store, and it drew people in. So, but anyway.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing nowadays. It is a phenomenon. Me and Jennifer have a friend who went this past summer to be a mermaid at the Ripley's Aquarium in Gatlinburg. Down here in Florida in Wickiwacky Springs, they have a live mermaid show, right? So now it's really hard. This goes back to the point that we've talked about several times. Unfortunately, in this day and age, pictures and videos are the worst possible type of evidence we can have, because nowadays they're so easily manipulated and faked and hoaxed, and it just makes it really hard.
But how can you discount these reports that people are swimming, out in the ocean and they have a hand grab them by the ankles? Now that is creepy. We actually had a report on the Ohio River. And this is documented, ladies and gentlemen, on the Ohio River. People were swimming off of Harrison County. And I think it was back in the late 70s or early 80s. It's documented. You can Google it. And people were swimming off the dock. And one got pulled by their ankles. And they said it was hands that grabbed them and yanked underneath the water. And it caused a frantic for years. But anyways.
Oh, yeah.
So
2008. A recent and convincing sighting happened in a small village. I'm not going to pronounce that word. Western Cape of South Africa. They reported it to the New Zealand Herald. A resident of the village, Daniel Cupido, said he and his friends were next to the river around 11:30 p.m. When they heard something like someone bashing on a wall. Not sure what that's supposed to mean. They walked toward the sound and found a figure like that of a white woman with long black hair thrashing in the water.
Plus, you want to give a
Crashing
shout
in the
out
water.
to Bigfoot Michigan Rob. If you're not a member, make sure and subscribe to his channel. Hello there, BMR. Nice to see you.
BMR, absolutely.
BMR. Yeah.
A figure like that of a white woman with long black hair thrashing about in the water. Again, long black hair. Cupido said that he tried to help the woman, right? So he's thinking, this white woman's drowning in the water. We better help her. But the woman made the strangest sound, which Dinah, Cupido's mother, said was so sorrowful, my heart could take it no more. The creatures were described as kalman, or half human and half fish creatures living in the deep pools. The tourism officer said she knew the people who saw the kalman as well, and they did not misuse alcohol and vouch for the credibility of the group. So they're out at night strolling along. They hear a commotion in the water. They think somebody's drowning. They go in to try and save her, and lo and behold, it is a mermaid. And she's freaking
how
out.
You discount that, right?
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting that they specify it was a white woman. For some reason, like if I'm describing a mythical person,
ladies and gentlemen, we have a white woman telling us the story, and the white woman's telling us the truth.
They said the mermaid was the white woman.
Oh, okay.
And the mermaid, they described the mermaid as a white woman.
Well, I've never seen a Puerto Rican or a Chinese mermaid. Have you?
Right. That's what I'm saying. I find that absolutely fascinating. Nobody is describing these things anything other than being white, being pink, being light skinned.
Right.
I find that fascinating, even in all these other cultures. All right. Israel. Back to another guy named Shlomo, hundreds of years later, right? This is probably the most famous sighting, guys, as there was a $1 million reward. Wow, I need more coffee. For anyone that could capture real footage of this mermaid. A man named Shlomo Cohen saw the mermaid and provided the following report. I was with friends when suddenly we saw a woman lying on the sand in a weird way. At first, I thought she was just another sunbather. But when we approached, she jumped into the water and disappeared. We were all in shock because we saw that she had a tail. Many people are telling us they're sure they've seen a mermaid, and they are all independent of each other. A council spokesperson told the news. Perhaps people say it is half girl, half fish, jumping like a dolphin. It does all kinds of tricks and then disappears. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that one. Is this a tourism thing? They're offering a reward. The tourist counselor coming in and saying, look, this mermaid is coming onto the shore and doing tricks and then disappearing. I don't know. Maybe they're taking advantage of some real sightings.
So I don't know if this is the one, but there was one. I know, Sonny 11, right? There was one on Paranormal caught on camera, and this was the ones where they were actually very well known for debunking their sent in footage before the ones where everybody would just send in stuff and they would air it. And they had tourists, and I don't know if this is the same one. They were walking, and there was a bunch of Orientals. And the reason why I say Orientals, I don't know if they were Japanese, Vietnamese, Yemenis, whatever. I don't know. But they're very well known for taking photographs and videos, right? And this is the era where everybody had some type of recording device, and they were walking out towards this pier, and they were all tourists, and they didn't speak a lick of English. And one of them was like, and they all was like, huh? And they pointed. And I probably just got flagged, right? And I'm trying to put you on mindset. And every one of them said something different. Nobody said the same thing. And one of them had just the right second. I mean, they must have broke their neck. That's how quick they turned. And they captured something that was on a rock. And it jumped off the rock into the water. And it was just maybe 2 or 3 seconds, if that. And everybody was like in disbelief, and they slowed it down, and it wasn't fabricated because back then they didn't really have the technology to do what we can now. Because I mean, it was like I want to say around this time. I don't know if this is the one where I know, right, Sonny? I'm killing you tonight. Last night was awful. Tonight
it's a different story, but it's.
But yeah, did you see the footage? Because it's not out there anymore.
I did.
Because I was out there this week looking for it, and I couldn't find it. And why is it every time I want to find something, it's not there? So
that happens an awful lot. I'm gonna have to start using multiple search engines, I think.
I've got 20 terabyte hard drives. So when I find stuff, I'm backing it up, and it's encrypted. So I'm saying, like, night, Lady Wolf. You know what? Right. I'm gonna start howling for her when she goes to bed.
Ow.
Ow.
All right. This is the last modern day sighting, guys. This brought us up to 2012. I didn't find any good reports after that. This was Zimbabwe. A group of workers in Zimbabwe had an extraordinary encounter while installing a water pump in a dam, fresh water. As they began the installation process, they noticed the pipes were blocked, preventing the water flow. To investigate the issue, local divers were hired to explore the pipes underwater. Go check out the blockage, right? What they saw stunned them. There was a mermaid swimming nearby. The mermaid had the upper body of a woman, the lower body of a fish, and she was described as exceptionally beautiful. The divers reported that she was friendly and seemed curious about their presence. When they surfaced and shared their encounter with the other workers, they were met with disbelief and skepticism. Imagine that. Government officials overseeing the project believed the divers were making up the story to avoid completing the work. To verify the claims, outside divers and workers were brought in, and they too reported seeing the mermaid. However, the government insisted that the repairs continued. Despite the numerous attempts, the workers gave up and abandoned the project altogether. There was a note that I didn't put in here that I saw in one of the other reports on it, is they hired, and this is their words, an outside white crew to come in and finish it. Right? So you got these workers, they're diving, they see a mermaid, they come up. The government says, you guys are full of it. We're going to bring in other people to do the job. So they bring in other people to do the job, and those guys are going, nah, dude, like, they're legit. There's a mermaid down there. We're dipping. And so the government couldn't get any of the local people to do the work anymore. So they literally had to hire somebody completely out.
Was it you? I was talking about Ohio River in the LG&E when they clean out the pipes. They actually hire divers with harpoon gun, and people quit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rebecca wants to know, are there no sightings of mermaid? What the hell, Rebecca? Are you jealous?
No, they're not in any of these reports.
Hey, Trina. Welcome to the show.
I mean, that is a very good point. There is no sighting in these reports of mermen. Not saying they've never been sighted, but on the websites that I pulled up,
she's watching too much TV. Who's that guy? It's a merman. Aquaman. Well,
He's not quite a merman, but little Jason Momoa. We should throw a picture up there for some of the people. Physical evidence. Mummified mermaid was caught in a fishing net in the 1700s, kept as a sacred object, but it was tested and discovered it was a fake made of bones, pufferfish skin, and animal hair. 13 mermaid mummies like this have been found and are thought to bring the owner long life. So I found lots of skeletons of mermaids, but they were either gaffs like the Fiji mermaid, which was, P.T. Barnum's famous Fiji mermaid, which ended up being a monkey and a fish put together and taxidermied, photoshops, just downright fakes, mockumentaries, hoaxes. I could not find anything at all that I would classify as any physical evidence. Is that surprising? Not really.
I say we have it. I say it's washed up on beaches. I don't know if it was this show we talked about things washing up on beaches. that governments in these municipalities would get backhoes and they would dig a hole in the beach. And just, I'm like, what are you on do? What is wrong with you? Go get a flatbed truck and let's haul it. And they don't do it.
Which I can agree. Again, you know, it's kind of the Bigfoot style. If these creatures are out there, they're very rare. They're very elusive. It would be a very rare occasion that you would catch a dead one somewhere or one washed up on shore. But we heard reports of where they did. It's just I couldn't find anything that was like, here's a physical piece from a mermaid that couldn't be accounted for somewhere else. I want to say that there's a lot of creatures in the sea, especially in the skate and ray family, that people will mistake for mermaids or their skeletons because they are cartilaginous, but they do have a certain skeletal structure as well. Bony fishes, they can look like a mermaid. There is one video going around. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
There's Rebecca. Your merman.
There you go, Rebecca. Sweet dreams.
There's a video going around of where they thought they caught something that was like a mermaid, but when they flipped it over, it was actually this creature called a skate. And so I couldn't find anything that I could justify as saying, yes, we have possible physical evidence. However, we can't talk about mermaids without talking about mermaid syndrome.
And Ninja Dave brings up a good thing. Maybe the hoaxes are to cover up the real thing. That is a possibility. Now, the ones that the one thing that I want to recall are the ones that are people that are the everyday Joe that are walking along the beaches with their loved ones or spouse or their significant other, and they're recording or broadcasting live their mourning, and they walk or come across what's laying on the beach, and it's a real live encounter of whatever. It's not hoaxed. And next thing you know, the beach is shut down and roped off, and it's just like, and something disappears. But anyway,
well,
look, Rebecca's like, nice, Rebecca. Sweet dreams are made of these. Anyways,
nice. Well, yeah, and that's just it. And I actually had a similar discussion past couple days with Bigfoot.
I like to see him with his shirt off. Man, this is a
PG-13 okay. Look, listen. This is a family show, Rebecca.
Right.
Go watch Aquaman. Come on. See, now you got me all distracted. Thanks.
Justin, are we getting ready to go shirtless?
Oh, not me. You don't want to see that. We'll definitely get canceled on that.
Trina is asking us siren and mermaids.
Yeah, Brian, you forgot to hit me that up. So a siren is from Greek mythology. Here's the thing with the sirens. Before mermaid lore became popular in Greek mythology, sirens were half bird and half female. Okay. And yes, they still had the same thing. They were out to sea. They would call and sing beautiful songs and trick the sailors to come into the shore or come into the rocks and shoals and reefs and crash, and they'd like kill them and eat them, kind of a thing. Right. But once mermaid lore and mythology kind of made its way into more of the Greek popularity, sirens then transformed into mermaids. And so depending on who you were talking to, who was telling the story, a siren could be a mermaid, or it could be what we would recognize as a harpy. So part female, part bird, or part fish and part female. So yes, sirens are mermaids, but not all sirens are mermaids. All mermaids aren't sirens. So two different things there.
Right.
Now, because I can't remember the train of thought I was talking on, we'll just get back onto this other one. And my mom brought this to my attention, and then she really wanted me to make sure we talked about this. There is a medical condition called mermaid syndrome. It is a very rare disorder affecting, on average, less than one baby per 100,000 live births. Male babies experience the condition 3 times more often than females. It is called sirenomelia. It's a whole set of genetic abnormalities that cause a baby to be born with fused limbs, which may resemble a mermaid's tail. The condition is very rare, with only about 300 reports of this condition occurring in the world. It is most often fatal. Babies born with mermaid syndrome also tend to have a lot of other anomalies that affect their abilities to survive, mostly organ failure. Yeah, sadly, because mermaid syndrome often causes other organ abnormalities, including those of the heart and lungs, it is normally typically fatal in the newborn stage. That being said, there have been a few exceptionally rare cases where they can live up into about 15, I think was the oldest one I saw, 15 years old. So to approach this, could it be just regular people with birth defects? Not very likely in the least. Yes, there's a mermaid syndrome. Skeptics will point to that. But if we look at this logically, as rare as it is, we're not going to have a complete historical record of accounts like we saw. These people have, unfortunately, a lot of things wrong with them. They're not out swimming in the sea and jumping with dolphins, and they're not up in the Hudson Bay. They're not all over the place. So, yes, there is a horrible medical condition named after a mermaid, but I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that it would account for mermaids. All right. So, definitely want to make sure we approach that. Personal experiences, I have never had nor spoken to anyone that claims to have had personal encounters with a mermaid or mermaid-like creature. This isn't one of those things where I'm out shopping at Walmart and somebody's, hey, you're into weird stuff. Let me tell you a mermaid story. It's never happened. I get Bigfoot stories. I get ghost stories. I get aliens. I get Dogman. Never have I ever had anybody say, hey, you like weird stuff? Let me tell you about the mermaid I saw. So I cannot say that has ever happened to me. So going through our believability matrix, ancient historical context, definitely there. Multicultural, definitely there. Line of historical sightings, definitely there. Modern day sightings, absolutely there. No physical evidence that I could find, and no personal experiences I could find. So that's kind of filtering it through. Is there enough for me to say 100% could be real? I'd have to say I'm on the fence, but definitely I think it's a plausible idea that there is something to this phenomenon. There's definitely something, at least in the human psyche, that believes this is 100% a legit thing that people are still seeing and have been seeing all through history, all around the world. So I'm going to say that may not be a mermaid like we would think of as a mermaid, but I believe there is some type of creature, entity, something out there that people are mistaking at the very least for something they would consider a mermaid, but not a manatee. That's as much stock as I can put into it. So I would say plausible, but no proof.
Interesting.
So that's what I think, guys. That's what I found. I was so surprised at all the sightings, all the reverends and soldiers and, you know, school teachers and all these people, religious leaders, all the different countries and cultures. And there's more. There is a lot more that I could have put into it, but I kind of realized after 2 days of putting this together going, there's a lot of these sightings. I'm not going to put them all in.
Right.
But I mean, I think it's absolutely wild. Yeah, Crystal J, if you want to see physical evidence, you would need to know someone in the Smithsonian. I don't even think knowing someone in the Smithsonian would do any good. I have seen shows where even the keepers of the Smithsonian don't know what they're keeping. They're just shelved away.
Right.
They've never been analyzed. They've never been looked at. They don't want them looked at. Simple as that. Simple as that. You know.
Welcome, Shelby. Nice to have you on the show. So yeah.
So what do you guys think?
I always want to go to the Vatican.
Oh,
I think
right.
that'd be an interesting place.
That
33 something, 36
place.
miles, 35 miles of library and vault or something. Yeah.
Yep. Somebody had asked to see the pictures of the one that I believe is kind of a fake, a hoax. So this is one of his pictures.
So that reminds me of a shark would look like.
Now the tail is cut off. That's not the picture of the tail, but I can't Let me
It
see if I
looks
can-
like a flipper off of a diving person, right?
Yeah, let me
See his
see.
logo. Oh, no. Go back. See his logo.
Yeah,
Scroll back. This logo that you just had up. See it right there.
the mermaid story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. This is first ever photos of a mermaid. And then this is like his business page, right? So and here's another one if you guys can see that one. Right. So for me, you see, I mean, look, it's really close. It's crystal clear water. How come all the shots are silhouette? How come you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like they're intentionally put together to not show details. And it just keeps talking about the story. Oh, hey, look, shop for some stuff. So I don't put a lot of stock in that particular story, but like I said, there's nothing I can say going, oh, that's definitely a hoax. Nobody came forward and said he hoaxed it. There's nothing. So I will just leave that to you guys to figure out what you think of it. But
It's
that
a
was the
fascinating subject, ladies and gentlemen. That's for sure.
It is.
People are seeing something out there and hearing something.
Yeah. And there was reports I was specifically looking for that I couldn't find. There was one report that came out of the Middle East. I want to say, I'm not even going to say it because I can't pinpoint it. Somewhere in the Middle East where they kept seeing this one out on a rock in the middle of the river. But it was funny because they said something like, she doesn't look like we thought she would. She looks like old and ugly and gray skinned. And we thought she would be beautiful because she's a mermaid. Right. And that just kind of blew me away when I first read that. And this was a long time ago. And I was like, wow. Right. So we're going, if I made up a mermaid story, I would say this, but it wasn't even close to that. So I thought that was a good story. I wanted to get to the point where we were talking about mermaids transforming and coming on shore and seducing men and, that kind of thing. In Brazil, they have the Amazonian river dolphin called the boto. Okay. And in the culture down there, that is what the boto does. A certain either, like one night out of the year, or there's a certain time frame to it where a boto will transform to a human and come ashore to these parties. And they'd be very attractive, either men or women. Like they're just seducing the opposite sex, and they take them with them to their undersea caverns. And then if they stayed too long, they'd become a boto, all this kind of stuff. But it's the same kind of concept. And so some people have tried to put that into the mermaid story. Obviously, that's a shapeshifter, not a mermaid, but it's still the same kind of thing where they're, enticing and luring people to their watery doom. And so we wanted to throw that in there because you had mentioned that attached to mermaid lore. Oh, is that Brian?
No, yeah. Mermaid only fans, anyways.
Wouldn't everything look like a silhouette with the light coming from above the subject? Oh, yeah, absolutely it would. But if you're in the water and you're swimming around mermaids and you're that close to a picture, why are those the only two pictures you got if you got more than one?
Right.
And they're completely silhouetted directly like that, where the story doesn't even talk about them being in the water with them. The story talks about seeing it jumping with the dolphins. So the pictures don't match the story.
And underwater cameras don't go snap. That's snap. Yeah, frames per second. So why does Rebecca want me to sing? What would you do if I sang you a song?
I think you're supposed to sing out of tune.
Yeah. I was getting there. I was warming up to her. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much.
She's like, damn it, Grizzly, I didn't want you to sing to me. but yeah, I mean, each their own. And like I said earlier in the show, I've seen people that have not told the truth on a lot of things in life, and something actually did happen to them, and they were telling the truth, and however, it didn't end up well for them or in their circumstance. And I hate to say that in life, but it happens. So
absolutely. And again, just because something can be fake doesn't mean everything is fake. I actually had this huge discussion with somebody on Facebook the other day. They're saying, because it can be faked, therefore everything is faked. And I said that is not a logical conclusion at all. Just because you get one result, just because you have one thing that's fake, does not discount the entire concept, entire theory, the entire thing, right? So I don't think these people were faking mermaid stories since 1000 BC. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and people drawing on caves and stuff, and that's what we're going to end the show with is people drawing on caves. I mean, that's how they told their stories, ladies and gentlemen.
It's where we started it. It's where we'll end it.
Yes, but anyways, I'm glad, Sonny, if you're ever down on your luck and
you want me to sing you a song? I will sing. Sing.
But I will. I love to have a little fun. And Brian Barber and I are going to do some Bigfoot hunting at the end of the month, aren't we, Brian? So we're going to get Brian Barber up in shape, and we're going to do some filming. And Rebecca's like, "What kind of filming, Rebecca?" It's Bigfoot related, all right? So don't get excited, Rebecca. So,
wrong button. Hold on.
There we go. I gotta get used to these buttons now.
You got to get used to the laugh track sign.
Yeah, that's right. But it was fantastic. Yes.
Grizzly, cover your ears real quick.
Really? I was not.
Sorry,
I was not.
I had to cough real quick.
Look, there we go. We done paint your tents. Yeah, so there we go. Right. So somebody asked me tonight about the moon landing, and I'm like, man, I got so much on that topic again. So I actually talked to, what was his name that got punched by Neil Armstrong? Bart. Bart Siebler or Siebler or whatever. I interviewed him a couple years ago, and he is a ride. I got to get out and bring him back on the show. I actually interviewed him a few years ago on one of my shows, man, and he's just off the chart. Yeah, off the chart. But I mean, you talk how he is not floating with the fishies. So, but anyways, no one better hang a cooked chicken behind my tent. Here we go. Poor guy. Welcome, Curtis. I'm actually going to have that guy on the show that hung the chicken with the glow stick. Oh my God.
With the glow stick.
Yes.
But listen. I'm sorry, but that was genius. Genius.
And the guy, I was trying to get my camera turned on when a guy was arguing, and the guy was like, "Well, is the chicken gone?" That's what he was more worried about, was the chicken gone. And he was like, "Dude, I got kids in my tent, and you're gonna hang a chicken?" He's like, "Was the glow stick there, or was the chicken gone, or is they both gone?" Anyways, and he said, "That's me, Curtis." It was great. It was great. I loved it. Then the food off the grill. And ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, I loved it.
If you guys didn't see that, we're talking about their Bigfoot expedition they had, Salt Lake. Check it out, guys.
Salt Fork, y'all.
Sorry.
Ohio,
Fork, Ohio. Check it out. Go on to the YouTube channel, guys. Bigfoot Outlaw. Look at it. Check it out. It was a blast. I'm hoping I can go to the next one. We'll see what happens depending on my.
This camp is going to be run over with Bigfoot Outlaw gangs and family. If everybody's going to be able to come,
that'd be awesome.
Unbelievable. But yes, that's what everybody said. Are you sure it wasn't Bigfoot? And I'm telling you, if you never heard, it sounded like it was porn, and that's what woke me up. I was like, "What the hell?"
Something.
But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, and if you would have saw old Bear in the tree line, it was like, when I got out, I was like, "What are you doing?" It was like Elmer, shh, me on wabbit. That's what he was like. He was like, shh. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing?" He's like, "You got a visitor." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Whatever." Yeah, Crystal, you do love it. I was more worried about the stuff in the damn tote. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let me find. I can't believe you brought that up.
For the full story, check it out on the channel.
Yeah, it was off the chart. It was off the chart. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I don't remember what. Here we go. We got it. All right, coast to coast around the world. We'll see you tomorrow. I think at 9:00. Because we got one of our co-hosts is out of town on her anniversary and birthday. So we'll catch you. Good job, Justin.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.
One more thing real quick, guys. Any subject you want, put it in the Facebook group. We do have a new Facebook group.
Oh, yeah,
I set a
I'm glad
bunch
you
of
said that.
invites out. Join the Facebook group. Look for it. You'll see it under my profile or Grizzly's profile. Anything you guys want to deep dive on, we can go down the rabbit hole. Throw me some subjects. Give me some ideas.
Yeah, because somebody did recommend Mermaids, didn't they?
Yeah,
I
That
forgot
was you,
who.
man.
No, it wasn't me. It was somebody in the audience.
Yeah, somebody mentioned it, and then you just kind of latched onto it.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, let's do Mermaids. So yeah.
Yeah,
so
give me
throw out
any
some topics.
topic, guys. We'll go down that rabbit hole.
All right. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Godspeed. Bye-bye.
Coming to a YouTube channel near you.